afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Stock Market Today for Thursday, August 28th. It's Alexis Garcia here, and the S&P 500 hit fresh highs today as the market digested those NVIDIA earnings. And here with me to help break down all of today's market action is IBD News editor Ed Carson. So Ed, I've had my cold brew, I've had my matcha. I'm ready to tackle this. We're through NVIDIA earnings. And we also got some economic data with better than expected GDP and weekly jobless claims numbers. But before we kind of dive into that, what stocks do you want to talk about today?
Yeah, I want to take a look at Cameco, Rubrik, and Micron technology, and they all showed similar bullish action today.
All right. Well, hopefully I can be a better than expected host for you today, Ed. But while we jump over to the market action here, let's check in on the major indexes and see how they finished. The S&P 500 up about 0.3% today. The Dow up about almost 0.2%. The Nasdaq leading the way up 0.5%, and small caps up around 0.2%. So Ed, let me get my screen share up, and we can just start with NVIDIA earnings because that's kind of been the big headline today. And we can see NVIDIA here pairing some early losses down around 0.8% today. But how do you characterize the market reaction to these earnings today?
I think the reaction was great, really. When the market has been coming up the last few days and continued to move higher, even though Nvidia fell. And there was reasons to be happy about Nvidia. There's reasons to be negative if you wanted to be that way. Ultimately, the market is just going sideways. This is still staying in a little range. It's got a 3 weeks tight. It's on track for 4 weeks right now, so that seems fine. And while the S&P hit a record high, the Dow hit a record close, the Nasdaq came just within an inches of a record high. So we're seeing a lot of, when that's happening, they're sort of right around the indexes are moving out of or at the very top of ranges. So that's translating into stocks either setting up or moving out. A bunch are rebalancing off of key levels or forming handles. So a lot of stocks for that investors could have bought today, even if the indexes weren't moving that much and Nvidia was slightly down.
And we're on the S&P 500 daily here, Ed. And as you said, hitting those fresh highs, and we're right at around that 6,500 level. So talk to me about your thoughts about how this is developing and what you're looking for.
We had that big test just before we sort of got a shakeout. There were some concerns. It was just a week ago. I mean, that's where we were a week ago at this time. It's like, oh boy, I mean, things are fine, but if Powell things doesn't go right, it did. But look, the market is on a solid uptrend. Tomorrow we do get the PC inflation data, which is the Fed's favorite inflation gauge, but it's probably going to take a lot to derail a rate cut for a lot of reasons. So I don't know if it'll have that big of an impact, but right now, just everything looks really on course here.
All right, let's take a look at the NASDAQ composite quickly. And again, this one just shy of those highs, but three straight days of gains here, Ed. So thoughts here?
Yeah, I mean, just nice little modest gains. Not every day has to be a huge gain. But you rise, even if just rising 0.3 every day, you'd get a huge return. And there was a lot of strength beyond this headline number.
All right, what about the Dow, Ed? Let me pull that up here and we can get your thoughts. As you mentioned, just shy of those highs here, but thoughts on the Dow?
Yeah, really, it was I believe, a record close. So just that sort of moved out. I mean, this one, like the S&P, has sort of moved out from the highs, essentially. So a lot of strength here. NVIDIA is actually a component. It's a component of the S&P and NASDAQ as well. There's a lot of breadth to this market right now. Not necessarily today. Today was more about growth stocks and tech stocks. But you look at these indexes, they're all at highs. The Russell 2000, which has struggled to get any headway, but IWM is at the highest levels of 2025, and moving quite a bit higher here recently. So clearly above recent levels. So that's encouraging as well.
All right, let's briefly check in on the 10-year Treasury yield, Ed. So thoughts here, as you mentioned, we're looking out to possible interest rate decision in a couple weeks here. This down around 0.7% today. But what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, it didn't move a whole lot, but very quickly, a few days ago, we were butting up against the 50-day line, heading into Powell, and it's come right back down to the right, essentially the lowest levels in 4 months. I mean, it's not quite there, but and that's with stronger than expected economic data. It would have been perfectly normal to see that rise a few basis points. This is probably one reason why stocks had a modest gain today. It's just seeing uh, lower rates on that end, mortgage rates and other things. We're seeing that trend over the last few months. So another positive for the market right now.
All right, let's check in on some sector ETFs, starting with the VanEck Semiconductor. And as we mentioned, NVIDIA down slightly today, but this one making a gain of around 0.4%. So thoughts here?
Yeah, it was sort of nice to see this up, even though Nvidia was down. So, AMD wasn't really up much. Taiwan Semi, I think, edged lower, which makes Nvidia chips. I mean, so some of the bigger names were flat or down, and yet SMH was still able to come up. Uh, this is strong.
All right, let's take a look at software then, Ed. This one making a little bit of a comeback here, flirting with that 50-day line. A nice gain today, 1.5%. So what's your take?
Yeah, I mean, it's made a comeback. It's obviously has more to go. And it's interesting because there's a couple of the names that were propping it up, like Palantir, aren't really moving it right now after a huge run. But some other names we saw some strength today. We're going to look at one stock that's in, like Rubrik was in there. We'll look at that in a few minutes. But there was definitely names like CrowdStrike and MongoDB and Snowflake have lifted, some positive results that after a lot of lagging action underlying the software sector.
All right, well, let's take a look at the IBD Growth 50 here, Ed. And as you mentioned, a lot of growth stocks having a good day today. This one up 1.7%. So, what's your take here in terms of what this is saying about, market breadth and what stocks are participating?
Yeah, well, it's certainly saying that growth and speculative growth is doing well. And sometimes you can have a little luck of the draw about what names are in there because ARKK, didn't have as good of a day. It had us all day. I mean, it was fine, but it wasn't like surging to that same extent. So there can always be that lucky stock that surges and not a lucky stock that falls. But yeah, speculative growth is still doing very well. It looked discouraging a week or so ago. I mean, that was looking ugly, but things bounce back, and really taken off. So a lot of strength there.
All right, let's check in on the cybersecurity sector. This is the NASDAQ cybersecurity, up about 1.1%. You mentioned Snowflake, that company reporting earnings today. And look at this earnings jump here at up around 20% today. So let's look at cyber, Ed, and give me your thoughts here.
Yeah, and this is benefiting to some extent from CrowdStrike, which I think lifted the group. Not CrowdStrike reversed higher today on its results. At first, it looked like it wasn't going to be good at all, but found support, nice bounce, and definitely some other names rallied on that. So I think people could have said, "I don't know what's happening here, but I'm going cyber. Cyber. You want to take a look? There's a few ETFs that are in the cybersecurity phase, so you want to go under the hood and say which stocks are in there, which ones you like." But that looked actionable to me right there. I didn't notice it till late in the session, but nice downtrend above the 50-day line. And honestly, we see a lot of there was a lot of stocks that were going above or rebounding from their 50-day line or their 21-day line and breaking a trend line. So this is definitely one way you could have played some of the movement today.
All right, let's take a look at ITA. That's the Aerospace and Defense ETF. This one up 0.4%. So why is this one on your radar?
There's definitely a lot of aerospace names now. The big move was a couple of days ago, but there's a lot that are doing well, some including some big giants like Boeing and RTX and General Dynamics, but also, some profitable names like FTAI, uh, Carmen, KRMN, so there's all sorts of things in there. And I'm not sure if all these names are in that ETF, but that whole space, Rocket Lab, RKLB, uh, space like it's not profitable, but it's growing strong. So there's a lot of whether it's big or whether it's sort of speculative. There's a lot of things in this sector, and it's probably an area that investors want to be aware of. So they're not. If you want some growth, but want some diversity from AI, this is definitely a way right now to get it.
All right, Ed. Well, let's move on to some individual stocks, starting with Cameco. And as you mentioned today, Ed, a lot of stocks, some powerful moves here. This went up about 4.4%, moving above this 21-day line in a strong way.
Yeah, so this is a uranium producer, which means it's a nuclear play, which means it's an AI play. So, it doesn't feel like AI, I'm sure, to people in lead line suits, digging out uranium, but it is definitely bounced right off the 50-day line. It wasn't tremendous volume, but it picked up from earlier on. There's a downtrend from the top of this base. It's probably on its way toward a flat base after this week. There's almost a little double bottom aspect to it as well. So today's move sort of got it above the middle of that W. So you could have also used that, or if it can, you could also use that, like if it just making sure that it gets above that. If you didn't buy it now, you could probably still buy it off of that. So yeah, there's this nice growth on this one. This one does. This is also one that 10. It's probably great to find it off the 50-day line, sometimes even the 200-day line. There's just sort of a history of some choppy breakouts. You can look even just here, you can see a couple of times it tried to break out or hit new highs and then it rolled over. So this is one off, and it's good to try to find an early entry on. But yeah, there's a lot of stocks like this today.
All right, let's take a look at Rubrik. This was also one you mentioned. Again, another move here off the 50-day line. This one up about 6.3%, Ed. So thoughts here?
Yeah, so clearly benefiting from CrowdStrike, and we'll see on just like today, getting above the short-term highs, or maybe a very short trend line from that 97. You could see that there is sort of an entry, in that situation. It sort of came up intraday. If you do a trend line from the top of the base, it sort of came up to that from all the way over, yeah, from over at the 103 or wherever that is, and sort of came up to that level and hit resistance. So I think if you didn't buy it already, you could say, well, wait a second, I'm going to see if it clears this trend line at this point. Uh, the issue with Rubrik, and it has strong growth, losses are declining. There's a lot of it, in fact, last week or so, it undercut the lows of the base and then rebounded. So all that can be encouraging. On the flip side, there have been a lot of downside reversals in this base, especially the last few weeks. So, and even that one time when it got up to 97, it very quickly just turned around. So even when it held the gain for a day, it couldn't hold it. So that makes it tricky. Sometimes it's like, well, when do I finally get into this? Because there could have been people who played this 2 or 3 times and got shaken out. And there are earnings in 12 days. This is definitely a stock that could build a cushion in 12 days, but that is something to watch out for as well. But nice action here. People have been waiting for this one to move. Is this the time it's going to move? Well, we'll see.
All right, well, let's wrap then with a look at Micron Technology. Another one here at up 3.6% today, moving above that 50-day line.
Yeah, broke the downtrend of the handle, bouncing off the 50-day line. Yeah, again, just over and over. There's so many stocks that had that kind of thing. So early entry there. This already given strong guidance a couple of weeks ago, which is one reason it almost hit a new high. And it pulled back with the market with some growth stocks, but this one had a nice solid performance. You can look over there and see on the growth trend, a huge growth seen for fiscal 2025, which is almost over, but then solid growth again next year as well. So this was definitely an opportunity, and one reason why SMH was up. This is one of the bigger components in there. So this was one of the top performers, especially among the big names.
All right, Ed. Well, thank you so much for your thoughts today. And I know you and I have another earnings cheat sheet episode that we're, going to be having out here soon to wrap up the cycle. So be sure to tune in tomorrow for that. And that's it for today. We'll be back with more market analysis tomorrow morning, starting with IBD Live. You can head on over to investors.com/IBD Live for all the details there. And come right back here tomorrow. We'll have Justin Nielsen and Mike Webster doing their weekly extended version of Stock Market Today. So you won't want to miss that. So thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.